The morning started like any other day for Captain Jake Morrison aboard the USS Horizon. He was drinking his coffee and reading reports from the night shift when the alarms began to sound. The bridge crew rushed to their stations as the ship's sensors picked up something that should not have been there. 3 large ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. They were unlike anything humans had ever seen before. The vessels looked like giant crystals floating in space with surfaces that seemed to glow with their own light. Each ship was 10 times larger than the biggest human warship. Jake put down his coffee cup and walked to the command chair. His hands were steady, but his heart was beating fast. For 50 years, humans had wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer. The communication officer, Lieutenant Amy Clark, turned to face him. Her face was pale, but her voice was calm. "Captain, we are receiving a transmission. It is not in any human language, but our computers are trying to translate it." The main screen flickered, and then a face appeared. It was not human. The creature had skin that looked like blue crystal, and its eyes were large and silver. When it spoke, the voice sounded like music. But the words that came through the translator were cold. "Small beings of the third planet, I am Admiral Kexthor of the Zephyrian Collective. We have been watching your world for some time. Your species has finally developed the ability to travel between stars, though your technology is still very basic." Jake stood up from his chair. This was the moment that would change everything for humanity. He knew that his next words might determine the future of his entire species. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Horizon. We welcome you to our solar system. We hope that our 2 peoples can learn from each other and live in peace." The alien's expression did not change. "Peace is possible, small one, but it will come on our terms. The Zephyrian Collective has claimed this region of space. Your species has 2 choices. You can join the collective as a minor member world, or you can resist and face the consequences." Back on Earth, President Alex Carter was awakened at 3 in the morning by his security chief. The news of first contact spread quickly through the government. Within an hour, the Global Defense Council was meeting in an emergency session. General Paul Rodriguez, the head of Earth's combined fleet, studied the images from the horizon. His military experience told him that these alien ships were built for war. Their weapons were unlike anything humans had developed, and their technology was clearly centuries ahead of Earth's best science. "How long do we have?" President Carter asked. "The alien admiral has given us 72 hours to make our decision." Jake's voice came through the communication link from space. "They say they will return for our answer." Dr. Helen Wright, Earth's leading expert on psychology and communication, had been studying the alien transmission for hours. She looked tired, but her mind was sharp. "Mr. President, I believe these beings see us as children," she said. "They think we are weak because we are smaller than them and our technology is not as advanced." This Admiral Kexthor spoke to Captain Morrison the way an adult speaks to a child who has misbehaved. General Rodriguez nodded. "That might work. In our favor. If they think we are not a threat, they might not be prepared for serious resistance." President Carter looked around the room at his advisors. Each face showed the same mixture of fear and determination. Humanity had dreamed of meeting other intelligent life, but not like this. "What do we know about their military capabilities?" he asked. "Their ships are massive, but they move slowly," General Rodriguez replied. "Our fighters are faster and more maneuverable. However, their weapons and shields are far superior to ours. In a direct fight, we would lose badly," Dr. Wright added. "From what I can tell, these Zephyrians have conquered many other worlds. They seem to follow a pattern. They arrive, make demands, and expect immediate surrender. Most species probably give up without a fight." President Carter was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, he could see the lights of the city. Millions of people were going about their daily lives, not knowing that everything might change in the next 3 days. "What about negotiation?" he asked. "Can we buy more time?" "I don't think so," Dr. Wright said. "Their language and behavior suggest they see this as a simple business transaction. They have made their offer and they expect a quick answer." Back in space, Captain Jake Morrison was having his own meeting with his senior officers. Commander Lisa Bennett, the ship's science officer, had been analyzing the alien vessels with every sensor the Horizon possessed. "Their ships are incredible," she reported. "The energy readings are off the charts, but there is something strange about their formation. They are arranged in a perfect pattern, like they are following a textbook." Jake nodded. "What does that tell us?" "It might mean they are not used to fighting enemies who can think for themselves," Lisa said. "Most of their conquered worlds probably surrendered quickly. They might not have experience with real space combat." The next morning, President Carter called Jake Morrison directly. The conversation was brief and to the point. "Captain, I want you to arrange a meeting with this Admiral Kexthor. We will send a diplomatic team to their ship, but I want you to know that we will not surrender. If they want to take Earth, they will have to fight for it." Jake smiled for the first time since the aliens had arrived. "Understood, Mr. President. We will be ready." The stage was set. In less than 3 days, humanity would give its answer to the Zephyrian Collective. The aliens expected an easy victory, but they had never faced humans before. They did not understand that sometimes the smallest creatures can be the most dangerous when they have something worth fighting for. Admiral Kexthor was confident that the humans would surrender. After all, every other species had made the smart choice. Why would these small beings be any different? He was about to find out. The 72 hours passed like a countdown to the end of the world. When the deadline arrived, Admiral Kexthor moved his fleet into position around Earth. His 3 massive ships formed a triangle in space, with their weapons pointed toward the blue planet below. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Horizon as more human ships arrived. Earth's entire fleet was small compared to just one alien vessel, but every captain had volunteered to fight. The USS Liberty, commanded by Captain Rose Martinez, took position near Mars. The destroyer Defiance under Captain Bill Harper moved toward the asteroid belt. "Admiral Kexthor is sending a message," Lieutenant Amy Clark reported. The alien's face appeared on the screen again. His crystal-like features showed no emotion, but his voice carried the tone of someone who had done this many times before. "Small beings, your time is finished. You have chosen to resist, which is unfortunate but not surprising. Some species require a demonstration of our power before they understand their place. We will now proceed with your conquest." President Carter's voice came through the communication system from Earth. His words were broadcast to every human ship in the fleet. "This is President Carter speaking to all our brave men and women in space. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for the right of humanity to remain free. Show these aliens what humans can do when we are pushed too far." The battle began when the alien ships fired their first shots. Beams of pure energy reached across space toward the human fleet, but the human ships were not where the aliens expected them to be. Lieutenant Colonel Danny Hayes led his fighter squadron in a wild dance around the alien weapons fire. His small ship twisted and turned in ways that seemed impossible. The alien gunners had never seen anything move so unpredictably. "Tiger Squadron, this is Tiger Leader," Danny spoke into his radio. "Remember what we practiced, hit and run, never stay in one place. Make them guess where you will be next." The alien ships tried to track the human fighters, but their weapons moved too slowly. The humans darted in, fired their missiles, and disappeared before the aliens could respond. It was like trying to swat flies with a hammer. Captain Rose Martinez commanded her destroyer from the bridge as it swung around Mars. She used the planet's gravity to increase her ship's speed, something the alien computers did not expect. "Fire all missiles," she ordered. "Then take us behind the planet. We will come around the other side and hit them again." Her weapons struck the side of the nearest alien ship. The damage was small, but it was the first time in the battle that human weapons had actually hurt the enemy. On the alien flagship, Admiral Kexthor watched the battle with growing confusion. His ships were winning, but not in the way they usually won. The humans were not fighting like any enemy he had faced before. "Why do they not form proper battle lines?" he asked his second-in-command. "Why do they spread out like this? It makes no strategic sense." His science officer, Dr. Vekmar, was studying the human movements on his screen. "Admiral, I think they are not trying to win this battle. They are trying to learn how we fight. The battle moved to different parts of the solar system. Human ships used every planet, moon, and asteroid as cover or as a weapon. Captain Bill Harper flew his destroyer straight through Saturn's rings, using the ice and rock to hide from alien sensors. When a group of alien fighters finally cornered him, Harper did something that shocked the enemy pilots. Instead of trying to escape, he turned his ship around and flew straight at them. His destroyer was much larger than the alien fighters, and they had to scatter to avoid being rammed. "This is Captain Harper to all ships," he broadcast. "These aliens are good, but they fight like they are following a rulebook. Time to throw out the rulebook." The most surprising moment came when Sergeant Tony Garcia's Marine unit managed to board a damaged alien cruiser. The aliens had never expected humans to try to capture one of their ships during a space battle. Tony and his men fought their way through the alien corridors with a ferocity that terrified their enemies. The Zephyrians were larger and stronger, but the humans were faster and more aggressive. When the aliens tried to surrender, Tony's men treated them fairly, which confused the aliens even more. Major Sam Peterson was commanding ground forces on Mars when alien drop pods landed near the research colonies. The aliens expected to face frightened civilians, but they found human soldiers waiting for them. Sam had turned the entire colony into a fortress. His men used the low gravity of Mars to jump incredible distances, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. When dust storms rolled across the planet, the humans used them as cover while the aliens struggled to see through their advanced sensors. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the human fleet was badly damaged. Many good people had died, and Earth's military power was greatly reduced. By any normal measure, the aliens had won, but Admiral Kexthor did not feel like a winner. His own fleet had taken damage that should have been impossible. Worse, his soldiers were reporting things that made no sense to him. "Admiral," Dr. Vekmar reported, "we have recorded many unusual incidents during the battle. Human soldiers who stayed at their posts despite being badly wounded. Pilots who sacrificed their own ships to save others. Commanders who continued fighting even when they knew they could not win." "Show me," Kexthor ordered. The recordings were disturbing. One human pilot, Lieutenant Nancy Clark, had remained at her communication post with a broken arm and burns on her face. She had coordinated the final human attack while her ship was falling apart around her. Another recording showed Captain Lucy White ramming her destroyer into a Zephyrian battlecruiser. Her final transmission was heard clearly. "Tell my family, I kept my promise. Earth is still free." Most puzzling was a message from Commander Barry Johnson just before his ship was destroyed. Surrounded by enemy vessels, he had told his crew, "We are not fighting to win today. We are fighting so our children will have the chance to win tomorrow." Admiral Kexthor studied these recordings long into the night. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. These humans fought as if they believed in something more important than their own lives. For the first time since becoming an admiral, Kexthor began to wonder if conquering this small blue planet would be worth the cost. Admiral Kexthor could not sleep after the battle. He walked through the corridors of his flagship, thinking about what he had witnessed. His fleet had won, but the victory felt strange and hollow. In 300 years of conquest, he had never seen anything like the human resistance. Dr. Vekmar was still awake in his laboratory, studying the recorded footage from the battle. As the collective's chief military analyst, he had reviewed thousands of conflicts. This one was different in ways he could not yet explain. "Admiral," Vekmar said when Kexthor entered the lab, "I have been watching these recordings all night. There is something very unusual about how these humans fight." "Show me what you have found," Kexthor replied. The first recording played on the main screen. It showed Captain Lucy White's destroyer heading straight toward a Zephyrian battlecruiser. Her ship was badly damaged and on fire, but she did not try to escape. "Watch her crew." Vekmar pointed to smaller screens showing the inside of the human ship. "They know they are going to die, but look at their faces." Kexthor studied the images carefully. The human faces showed fear, but also something else. They were smiling. Some were even cheering as their ship raced toward certain destruction. "This makes no sense," Kexthor said. "Why would they celebrate their own deaths?" "That is what I am trying to understand." Vekmar replied. He switched to another recording. Here is another example. This human stayed at her communication post, despite being badly injured. The screen showed Lieutenant Nancy Clark with blood on her face and her arm hanging uselessly at her side. She continued to coordinate the human attack even as her ship was being torn apart by alien weapons. Medical sensors show she was in great pain, Vekmar explained. She could have left her post and received treatment. Instead, she chose to stay and help her comrades until the very end. Kexthor watched recording after recording. Each one showed the same pattern. Humans making choices that put the group ahead of the individual. Soldiers staying behind to cover retreats. Pilots using their ships as shields to protect others. Commanders refusing to surrender even when defeat was certain. Dr. Vekmar, how do other species normally behave in battle? Kexthor asked. Most species fight to preserve themselves first, the scientist replied. When they are outnumbered or outgunned, they surrender to save their lives. This is logical behavior. These humans seem to follow different rules. The most puzzling recording came from Commander Barry Johnson. His ship was surrounded by 6 alien vessels, with no hope of escape. A normal commander would have surrendered to save his crew. Instead, Johnson had spoken to his people over the ship's communication system. We are not fighting to win today. We are fighting so our children will have the chance to win tomorrow. What does this mean? Kexthor asked. His children were not even in this battle. I think he was talking about all human children, Vekmar said slowly. Not just his own family, but the entire next generation of his species. This idea was difficult for the Zephyrians to understand. Their society was based on individual achievement and logical self-preservation. The concept of dying for people you had never met seemed completely irrational. Dr. Vekmar had been studying human communication intercepts for weeks before the battle. Now he began to see patterns he had missed before. Admiral, I request permission to examine the human data archives, he said. I believe their behavior in battle might be connected to their history. What kind of history could explain this madness? Kexthor asked. That is what I intend to find out, Vekmar replied. The human archives were easy to access. Humans had broadcast their history, literature, and culture into space for decades, hoping to make contact with other intelligent life. They had never expected those broadcasts to be used by potential conquerors. Vekmar began with recent human military conflicts. What he found disturbed him greatly. The humans had fought a massive war less than a century ago that they called World War II. The entire planet had been involved in the conflict for 6 years. Millions of humans had died, but they had continued fighting until the end. Look at this battle. Vekmar showed Kexthor footage from something humans called D-Day. Thousands of human soldiers attacked a heavily defended beach. They knew many would die, but they did it anyway. The recordings showed young humans jumping from boats into deadly weapons fire. Many fell before they reached the shore, but others kept coming. Wave after wave of them, running toward almost certain death. Why did they not retreat? Kexthor asked. This was clearly a hopeless attack. Because they believed they were fighting for something more important than their own lives, Vekmar explained. They were fighting against what they saw as evil. More disturbing examples followed. Humans defending a place called Stalingrad during winter, eating rats and tree bark rather than surrender. American soldiers at a place called the Alamo, fighting to the last man against impossible odds. British pilots during something called the Battle of Britain, flying damaged aircraft against superior numbers. The pattern was always the same. When humans believed in something strongly enough, they would die for it rather than give up. Dr. Vekmar, Kexthor said after hours of reviewing the footage, how many times have the humans fought wars like this? The scientist checked his data. According to their records, they have been fighting each other for thousands of years. But the interesting thing is what they fight for. Sometimes it is territory or resources, but often it is for ideas. Ideas? Freedom, justice, protection of the weak, concepts that have no physical form but seem to be very important to them. Kexthor began to understand why the recent battle had felt so strange. His forces had been fighting humans who believed they were defending their freedom and their children's future. To them, death was preferable to surrender. "What does this mean for our conquest?" he asked. Vekmar was quiet for a long moment. "Admiral, I believe we could destroy their military forces and occupy their planet. But I do not think we could ever truly control them. They would continue to resist until every last human was dead." The implications of this statement hung in the air like a dark cloud. The Zephyrian collective had built its empire by conquering worlds and incorporating their populations as workers and soldiers. But humans seemed incapable of being truly conquered. "There is something else, Admiral," Vekmar added. "I have been studying their technological development. In the past century, they have advanced faster than any species in our records. Their rate of innovation increases during times of conflict." "What are you saying?" "If we fight a long war with them, they will become more dangerous, not less. Each battle will teach them new ways to hurt us. Each defeat will make them more determined to win the next fight." Admiral Kexthor stared at the recordings of human soldiers charging into battle with smiles on their faces. For the first time in his long military career, he began to wonder if there was an enemy that could not be defeated by superior firepower alone. The humans had lost the first battle, but they had shown something that terrified him more than any weapon. They had shown that they would never stop fighting as long as a single human remained alive. Dr. Vekmar had not left his laboratory for 3 days. The human archives contained more information than he had expected, and each new discovery made him more concerned about the collective's plans for Earth. Admiral Kexthor found him hunched over multiple screens, his crystal-like skin pale from exhaustion. The recordings playing showed humans in various conflicts throughout their history, but these were different from the military battles they had studied before. "Admiral, you need to see this," Vekmar said without looking up. "I have been studying what humans call their civil rights movements. They fight wars without weapons. On the main screen, footage showed a human named Martin Luther King speaking to thousands of people. His words were translated by the computer, but the passion in his voice needed no translation. "Watch what happens next," Vekmar said. The recording showed humans walking peacefully through streets while other humans attacked them with clubs and dogs. The peaceful humans did not fight back, but they also did not run away. "I do not understand," Kexthor said. "Why do they not defend themselves?" "Because they are fighting for an idea," Vekmar explained. "They believe that showing their enemies cruelty will eventually change hearts and minds, and look at the results." The next recording showed how these peaceful protests had changed human society. Laws were changed, and the humans who had been oppressed gained equal rights. "They defeated their enemies without firing a single shot," Vekmar said. "This is a form of warfare we have never encountered." Kexthor studied more recordings from human history. In a place called India, a small human named Gandhi had used similar tactics to defeat the entire British Empire. In Eastern Europe, humans had brought down a massive government simply by refusing to cooperate with it. These humans have multiple ways of fighting, Kexthor realized. Sometimes they use weapons, sometimes they use ideas, and sometimes they use their willingness to suffer. But the most disturbing discovery was yet to come. Vekmar had found recordings of human conflicts where they had faced enemies with superior technology, just like the current situation with the Zephyrians. "Look at this conflict they call Vietnam," Vekmar said. "The American humans had better weapons, more soldiers, and complete control of the air. They should have won easily." The recordings showed American forces with advanced helicopters, jets, and heavy weapons fighting against Vietnamese humans who often had only simple rifles. By all logical analysis, the Americans should have achieved victory within months. "What happened?" Kexthor asked. "The Vietnamese humans refused to fight the kind of war the Americans expected," Vekmar explained. "They hid in tunnels, attacked supply lines, and melted away whenever the Americans tried to fight them directly. The war lasted for years, and eventually the Americans gave up and went home." More examples followed. In Afghanistan, humans with basic weapons had defeated first the Soviet Union and then the United States. In Iraq, Local humans had made occupation so costly that the invaders eventually withdrew. Do you see the pattern, Admiral? Vekmar asked. Humans do not need to win battles to win wars. They just need to make the cost of occupation higher than the value of conquest. Kexthor was beginning to understand the true danger humanity represented. It was not their weapons or their ships that made them dangerous. It was their refusal to accept defeat. Show me more, he ordered. The next recordings were the most chilling of all. They showed human resistance movements during World War II. Humans in occupied countries had fought secret wars against their conquerors for years. In Poland, humans had built an entire underground army while their country was occupied by enemies. In France, humans had sabotaged enemy operations and rescued Allied pilots. In Yugoslavia, humans had tied down entire enemy divisions in mountain warfare. Admiral, Vekmar said quietly, I have calculated what would happen if we occupied Earth. Based on their history, we would need to keep at least half our military forces there permanently just to maintain control, and they would never stop trying to drive us out. The recordings showed humans teaching their children to resist occupiers, families hiding weapons and supplies for future rebellions, entire communities working together to make life difficult for their conquerors. Even if we killed half the population, the survivors would continue fighting, Vekmar continued. And based on their technological advancement rate, they would eventually develop weapons capable of threatening our home worlds. Kexthor requested a private communication with the Collective Council. The conversation lasted for hours, with the Admiral explaining what he had learned about human nature. You are suggesting that a primitive species could threaten the entire collective? Council leader Zextar asked. I'm suggesting that this species is not primitive in the ways that matter, Kexthor replied. Their technology may be behind ours, but their strategic thinking is more advanced than anything we have encountered. He showed the council recordings of human military academies where young humans studied the same conflicts Vekmar had been analyzing. The humans were learning from their own history and the history of other species. Look at this, Kexthor said. They have studied every major military campaign in their history. They know exactly how to fight enemies with superior technology because they have done it many times before. The council watched recordings of human children playing war games that simulated fighting against technologically superior enemies. Even their entertainment included scenarios where small groups defeated large armies through clever tactics. These humans have been preparing for a war like this their entire lives, Kexthor explained. Not consciously, but as part of their culture. Every story they tell their children, every movie they make, every game they play involves overcoming impossible odds. Council leader Zextar was quiet for a long time. What do you recommend, Admiral? I recommend we reconsider our approach to this species, Kexthor said. Military conquest may be possible, but it would be extremely costly and might not achieve our goals. Back in his laboratory, Dr. Vekmar was studying the most recent human communications intercepts. What he found was perhaps the most disturbing discovery of all. The humans were not panicking after their defeat in the recent battle. Instead, they were analyzing their own performance and making improvements. Their military leaders were already developing new tactics based on what they had learned about Zephyrian capabilities. Admiral, Vekmar called Kexthor urgently. You need to hear this. The recording was from a human military briefing on Earth. General Paul Rodriguez was speaking to his staff about the recent battle. We learned more in 6 hours of fighting than we could have learned in 6 years of observation, the human general said. Now we know how they move, how they think, and how they fight. Next time will be different. The human officers were not defeated. They were excited. They saw the battle not as a loss but as a learning experience. They are already planning for the next fight, Vekmar said. And based on their history, each fight will be harder for us than the last. Admiral Kexthor realized that the collective faced a choice they had never confronted before. They could continue with their conquest and face an enemy that would never surrender and would only grow stronger with time. Or they could try something that went against everything the collective had ever done. They could try to make peace with an equal. The emergency session of the Zephyrian Collective Council lasted for 2 full days. Admiral Kexthor had presented his findings about human nature, and capabilities, but many council members found his conclusions hard to accept. You are telling us that a species that has barely left its home planet could threaten our entire empire? Council leader Zextar asked. I am telling you that continuing this war would cost more than we could ever gain, Kexthor replied. These humans will never truly surrender, and fighting them will only make them stronger. Dr. Vekimar had prepared a detailed report showing human technological advancement during times of conflict. The numbers were frightening. During their World War II, humans had developed jet engines, rockets, computers, and nuclear weapons in just 6 years. If we fight a long war with them, they will close the technology gap, Vekimar explained. Their innovation rate during conflict is faster than any species we have encountered. Some council members argued for overwhelming force. We should destroy their cities and break their will to fight, suggested military commander Kixara. That will not work, Kexthor said firmly. Look at their history. The more they suffer, the more determined they become. Destroying their cities will only create more resistance fighters. The debate continued until a junior analyst named Tekmore spoke up. He had been studying human culture and had found something the others had missed. Council members, I have discovered something important about these humans, Tekmore said nervously. They do not only know how to fight, they also know how to make peace. He showed recordings of humans ending conflicts through negotiation and compromise. The Good Friday Agreement that ended decades of fighting in Ireland. The Camp David Accords that brought peace between Egypt and Israel. The fall of the Berlin Wall that reunited Germany without a war. They can be reasonable when treated as equals, Tekmore explained. But they become incredibly dangerous when they feel threatened or oppressed. This gave the council a new perspective. Perhaps there was a way to deal with humans that did not involve conquest or destruction. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Alex Carter was holding his own emergency meetings. The human government had been studying the alien behavior and had reached some surprising conclusions. Dr. Helen Wright had been analyzing Zephyrian communications and body language during their interactions. Mr. President, I believe these aliens are reconsidering their position, she said. What makes you think that? Carter asked. Their admiral has not made any new threats in 72 hours, she explained. Also, our deep space monitors have detected no additional alien ships arriving. If they were planning a major attack, they would have called for reinforcements by now. General Paul Rodriguez had been preparing Earth's defenses for another battle, but he was also thinking about alternatives. Sir, we hurt them more than they expected in the first fight. Maybe they are starting to respect us. President Carter made a decision that would change the course of history. I want to send a message to their admiral. Not a surrender, not a threat, but an invitation to talk. The message was simple and direct. Admiral Kexthor, we know you are reconsidering your plans for our world. We are willing to discuss alternatives to war. Perhaps we can find a solution that benefits both our peoples. The response came within hours. President Carter, I am willing to meet with your representatives, but this will be a discussion between equals, not a surrender negotiation. Ambassador Rachel Murphy was chosen to lead the human delegation. She was known for her skill in difficult negotiations and her ability to understand different cultures. Dr. Helen Wright and General Rodriguez would accompany her. The meeting took place aboard a neutral space station that both sides agreed to build in the asteroid belt. It was a simple structure, but it represented something new in galactic politics, a place where different species could meet as equals. Admiral Kexthor arrived with Dr. Vekimar and several other Zephyrian officials. The first meeting was tense, with both sides uncertain about how to proceed. Admiral, Ambassador Murphy began, we understand that your people need resources and territory for expansion. We also understand that you have the power to take our world by force. But we believe there might be a better way. She presented a proposal that neither side had considered before. Instead of conquest, she suggested an alliance. Humans could offer their tactical innovation and problem-solving abilities, while the Iadawi, Zephyrians could provide advanced technology and access to galactic trade. You have seen how we fight, Murphy continued. But have you seen how we build, how we explore, how we solve problems that seem impossible? She showed recordings of human achievements. The International Space Station built by multiple nations, working together. The internet connecting billions of people across the planet. Medical advances that had eliminated diseases and extended human lifespans. We do not just know how to destroy, she explained. We know how to create and improve. Dr. Vekmar was intrigued. What would this alliance involve? Joint exploration. Missions, Murphy replied. Shared research projects, combined military exercises against common threats, trade agreements that benefit both worlds. The negotiations continued for weeks. Both sides had to overcome centuries of thinking about expansion through conquest. But gradually, a new framework emerged. The Terra-Zephyr alliance would be based on mutual respect and shared benefits. Human tactical doctrine would be taught in Zephyrian military academies, while alien technology would help Earth solve its energy and environmental problems. Most importantly, the alliance would establish a new model for how advanced species could interact with younger civilizations. Instead of conquest or destruction, there could be partnership and growth. The signing ceremony took place on the neutral space station. President Carter and Admiral Kexthor shook hands in a gesture that symbolized the end of one era and the beginning of another. Today we prove that different species can choose cooperation over conflict, Carter said. We show that strength comes not from conquering others but from working together. Admiral Kexthor nodded. The collective has learned much from humanity. You have taught us that there are some things more valuable than victory: honor, courage, and the wisdom to know when not to fight. Dr. Vekmar, now serving as the Alliance's first joint research coordinator, reflected on how close both species had come to a devastating war. We nearly destroyed each other because we did not understand each other, he said. Now we will explore the galaxy together. 5 years later, the first joint human Zephyrian exploration fleet prepared to leave the solar system. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral, commanded the mission with Zephyrian Admiral Nexvia as his second-in-command. The galaxy was vast and full of unknown dangers. But two species that had once been enemies now faced those challenges together, stronger as allies than either had ever been alone. The battle footage that had once threatened to justify humanity's destruction now served as a teaching tool in Alliance academies. Young officers from both species learned the same lesson: that true victory sometimes means choosing not to fight at all. In the end, the humans and Zephyrians discovered that the greatest conquest was not of territory or resources but of fear and misunderstanding. They had found something more valuable than any empire. They had found friendship among the stars.